The acrid smell of burnt plasteel and ozone hung heavy in the air as Centurion Flavius Aquila emerged from the smoking ruins of what had once been the proud Drydian outpost on Funnich-Elara. His armor, once gleaming with the golden eagle of the Drydus Confederation, was now scorched and dented. He squinted through the haze, his eyes searching for any sign of movement among the debris. "Marcus. Livia." "Sound off," he called, his voice hoarse from hours of shouting orders over the din of battle. A pile of rubble shifted nearby, and a figure in equally battered armor crawled out. Here, Centurion, came the weary voice of Marcus Valerius, the unit's communications specialist. From behind a half-melted defensive barrier, another voice rang out. Still breathing, Sir Livia Octavia reported, the young scout's usual enthusiasm dampened by exhaustion and defeat. As Flavius helped his comrades to their feet, more survivors began to emerge from the wreckage. Gaius Petronius, the unit's medic, limped towards them, supporting a barely conscious Titus Cato. "Is this all?" Flavius asked, his heart sinking as he counted their meager numbers. 5. Out of a century of 100 of the Drydus Confederation's finest, only 5 remained. The Centurion's mind raced back to the events that had led to this catastrophe. It had begun as a routine operation, a show of force to remind the people of Funnich-Elara of the benefits of Drydian rule. But something had gone terribly wrong. As Flavius relived the memory, the scene unfolded before him like a holographic projection. The sky had darkened unnaturally, and before anyone could react, a barrage of energy weapons had rained down upon their position. Their defenses, designed to repel conventional attacks, had crumbled under the onslaught of technology far beyond anything they had encountered before. Flavius had shouted orders, trying to rally his troops, but the enemy, cloaked in some kind of stealth technology, had been everywhere and nowhere at once. Legionnaires fell left and right, their advanced armor useless against weapons that seemed to phase through matter itself. In the chaos, Flavius had made the agonizing decision to order a retreat. But retreat to where? They were cut off from their ships, their communications jammed. As the survivors fled into the labyrinthine ruins of the outpost, Flavius could only hope that some might live to fight another day. The Centurion shook himself from his reverie, forcing himself back to the grim present. They were alive, but for how long? "Marcus," he said, turning to the communications specialist, "what's our situation?" Marcus shook his head grimly. "Not good, sir. Long-range comms are completely fried. Short range isn't much better. We're cut off." Livia chimed in, her voice tight with worry. "And we're still on enemy territory. 25 billion people on this planet, and I'd wager most of them would turn us in for a credit chit." Flavius nodded, processing the information. He looked at each of his remaining legionnaires and turned battered, exhausted, but still standing, still ready to serve the glory of Drydus. "Listen up," he said, his voice low but firm. "We may be defeated, but we are not beaten. We are legionnaires of the Drydus Confederation, heirs to the glory of ancient Rome and guardians of humanity's future among the stars. Our duty now is to survive and to bring word of what happened here back to the Emperor." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We need to lay low, gather supplies, and find a way to contact home. It won't be easy. We'll be outnumbered, outgunned, and hunted at every turn. But we have our training, our wits, and most importantly, we have each other." Gaius, who had been tending to Titus's wounds, looked up. "What's the plan, Centurion?" Flavius's eyes gleamed with determination. "We build a radio, something powerful enough to punch through whatever interference is blocking our signals. Marcus, can you do it?" The comm specialist nodded slowly. "With the right parts. Yes, I think I can." "Good," Flavius said. "Then that's our mission. We gather what we need, stay hidden, and we don't stop until we're back on Drydian soil. For the glory of Drydus and Emperor Julius Franco." For Drydus, the others echoed, their voices a mix of exhaustion and newfound resolve. As the first hints of dawn began to lighten the smoky sky, Centurion Flavius Aquila led his small band away from the ruins of their former stronghold. They moved silently, 5 ghosts in a city of billions, carrying with them the fate of an empire. The first rays of Funnich-Elara's twin suns crept over the horizon, casting long shadows across the megalopolis of Nova-Elara. In a dingy alleyway, on the outskirts of the industrial sector, 5 figures huddled in the shadows, their movements careful and deliberate, as they shed the last remnants of their Drydian armor. Centurion Flavius Aquila watched as his legionnaires donned the civilian attire they had scavenged from abandoned dwellings. The clothes were a far cry from the proud uniforms of the Drydus Confederation, but they would have to suffice. Remember, Flavius said in a low voice, "We're just ordinary workers. Keep your heads down and your ears open. Any sign of trouble, use the emergency signals we discussed." As they emerged onto the bustling streets of Nova-Elara, the legionnaires were struck by the sheer scale and grandeur of the city. Towering spires of plasteel and nanocarbon reached towards the sky, their surfaces gleaming with holographic advertisements. Yet amidst the futuristic marvels, the influence of ancient Rome was unmistakable. Great aqueducts, fashioned from some transparent material that seemed to defy gravity, crisscrossed between the skyscrapers, carrying water and power throughout the metropolis. Massive amphitheaters and colosseums dotted the cityscape, repurposed as entertainment venues and public forums. Statues of long-dead emperors and legendary heroes stood alongside monuments to more recent luminaries of science and industry. Livia, the young scout, marveled at the sight. "It's like Rome reborn among the stars," she whispered. Focus Flavius reminded her gently, "We have a mission to complete." The group split up as planned. Marcus and Gaius headed towards the tech districts, hoping to scavenge the more specialized components needed for their makeshift radio. Livia and Titus, still nursing his wounds, were tasked with gathering food and other basic supplies. Flavius took on the most dangerous task: reconnaissance and information gathering. As Marcus and Gaius made their way through the crowded streets, they couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation from the citizens of Nova-Elara. "Did you hear about the attack on the Drydian outpost?" one merchant whispered to another. "Good riddance," came the reply. "Those Roman wannabes have no business telling us how to live." Gaius tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that was no longer there. Marcus placed a calming hand on his shoulder. "Easy," he murmured. "Remember why we're here." In another part of the city, Livia and Titus navigated through a bustling marketplace. The air was thick with the scents of exotic spices and the sizzle of street food. Vendors called out their wares in a cacophony of languages, a testament to the diverse population of Funnich-Elara. As Livia haggled over the price of some nutrient packs, carefully using the local slang they had picked up, Titus noticed a public view screen broadcasting the news. The headline scrolled across the bottom: "Drydian forces routed, Confederation denies involvement." "Lies," Titus growled under his breath. "We were there. We know the truth." "Sheesh," Livia cautioned, completing her purchase. "We can't change minds if we're dead." Meanwhile, Flavius had made his way to one of the public forums, a massive structure that echoed the design of the Roman Forum. Here, citizens gathered to debate politics, philosophy, and the future of Funnich-Elara. The centurion listened intently, building a picture of the complex political landscape they now found themselves in. "The Drydians bring order and stability," one speaker argued. "Look at the wonders they've built on 100 worlds." "At what cost?" another retorted. "Our freedom? Our identity? We're not some long-lost Roman colony to be reclaimed." As the debate raged on, Flavius noticed a group of local security forces moving through the crowd. Their uniforms were sleek and modern, but the eagle emblems on their shoulders were unmistakable. These were Drydian loyalists. For a heart-stopping moment, one of the officers looked directly at Flavius. The centurion forced himself to remain calm, to act natural. After what seemed like an eternity, the officer's gaze moved on. Flavius let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. It was time to move. As he made his way towards the rendezvous point, he activated the short-range communicator hidden in his ear. "All units, report in," he subvocalized. One by one, his legionnaires checked in. They had survived their first foray into Nova-Elara, gathering crucial supplies and intelligence. But as the twin suns began to set, bathing the city in an ethereal purple glow, Flavius knew that their ordeal was far from over. As they regrouped in an abandoned warehouse on the city's edge, surrounded by the fruits of their scavenging, the weight of their situation pressed down upon them. They were 5 lost souls in a sea of billions, hunted by forces they didn't fully understand, on a world that was at best indifferent and at worst actively hostile to their presence. But as Flavius looked at the determined faces of his legionnaires, he felt a glimmer of hope. They had survived the impossible once. They would do so again. "Rest up," he told his team. "Tomorrow we build our lifeline home." As night fell over Nova-Elara, 5 fugitives from a shattered legion dreamed of distant Drydus and the long road that lay ahead. The warehouse that served as the Legionnaires' temporary base was abuzz with activity as the first light of dawn filtered through its grimy windows. Marcus hunched over a makeshift workbench, his fingers dancing across salvaged circuitry as he pieced together their lifeline home. The others moved quietly around him, sorting through their meager supplies and planning their next move. Centurion Flavius Aquila stood apart, his brow furrowed in concentration as he pored over a holographic map of Nova-Elara. They still needed several key components for the radio, and each excursion into the city increased their risk of discovery. "Livia," he called softly. The young scout looked up from where she was cleaning her hidden blade. "I need you to make another run. There's a tech bazaar in the Hadrian district. It might have what we need." Livia nodded, her eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Yes, Centurion. I won't let you down." As Livia slipped out into the awakening city, Flavius couldn't shake a feeling of unease. They had been lucky so far, but how long could their luck hold? Hours passed, and the tension in the warehouse grew with each minute that Livia didn't return. Titus paced restlessly, his hand never far from his concealed sidearm. Gaius pretended to inventory their medical supplies, but his eyes kept darting to the door. Just as Flavius was about to order a search, the door creaked open. Livia stumbled in, her face pale but her eyes alight with a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. "Centurion," she gasped, "you're not going to believe what I found." Before Flavius could question her, several figures emerged from the shadows behind Livia. The legionnaires tensed, weapons appearing in their hands as if by magic, but Livia held up a placating hand. "Wait, they're friends, I think." The leader of the newcomers stepped forward, pushing back a hood to reveal a face marked with intricate circuitry tattoos, the sign of a high-ranking techno-priest in Nova-Elaran society. "Greetings, soldiers of Drydus. I am Septimus, and we have much to discuss." Over the next hour, a remarkable tale unfolded. Septimus and his followers were part of a secret pro-Drydian resistance cell, working to undermine the corrupt local government and pave the way for full integration into the Confederation. They had been watching the Legionnaires since their arrival in the city, impressed by their resourcefulness and dedication. "We can offer you the components you need for your radio," Septimus explained, his augmented eyes gleaming. "We can even provide you with a secure location to broadcast from. But in return, we ask for your help." Flavius leaned forward, his voice cautious. "What kind of help?" Septimus smiled, a gesture that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We're planning to overthrow the planetary governor. With your military expertise, we could." "Absolutely not," Flavius cut him off. "Our mission is to contact our superiors and await extraction. We cannot involve ourselves in local politics." The techno-priest's expression hardened. "Then I'm afraid we've reached an impasse. You see, Centurion, you need us far more than we need you. Without our help, you'll never get off this planet alive." The atmosphere in the warehouse grew tense as the two groups faced off. Flavius's mind raced, weighing their options. Their duty to the Confederation was clear, but so was their duty to survive and report what had happened. Could they afford to turn down this offer of help, no matter the price? As the standoff continued, none of them noticed Titus slipping quietly towards the back of the warehouse. The wounded legionnaire's face was a mask of conflict as he fingered a small communicator hidden in his pocket, a direct line to the Funnich-Elaran security forces. One call, and he could end this charade, maybe even secure a way home for himself. But at what cost to his brothers and sisters in arms? Oblivious to the brewing betrayal, Flavius made his decision. "We'll help you," he said to Septimus, "but on our terms." We'll provide tactical advice, nothing more. Our primary goal remains contacting our superiors." Septimus considered for a moment, then nodded. "Acceptable. We'll begin preparations immediately. Time is of the essence." As the Resistance members began to integrate with the Legionnaires, sharing information and resources, the warehouse became a hive of activity. Plans were drawn up, strategies debated, and alliances forged in the crucible of shared danger and common purpose. But even as hope began to bloom among the stranded soldiers, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. In the heart of Nova-Elara, alerted by an anonymous tip, Funnich-Elaran security forces mobilized. Armored vehicles rumbled through the streets, and heavily armed troops began to sweep through the outer districts. The hunt was on, and the net was closing fast around the lost legion of Drydus. As night fell once more over the sprawling metropolis, Centurion Flavius Aquila stood at the warehouse window, watching the distant lights of patrol vehicles. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Little did he know, the greatest threat to their mission lurked not outside, but within their own ranks. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of Funnich-Elara itself. As Flavius turned back to his team and their newfound allies, he steeled himself for the challenges ahead. Whatever came, they would face it as they had faced everything else together, for the glory of Drydus. The pre-dawn air hung heavy with tension as Centurion Flavius Aquila led his small band of legionnaires and their newfound allies through the shadowy streets of Nova-Elara. Their destination loomed ahead, the Aqueduct of Hadrian, a colossal structure that merged ancient Roman engineering with futuristic technology, stretching kilometers into the sky. Marcus clutched the makeshift radio to his chest, its components a patchwork of scavenged parts and resistance-provided tech. Livia and Gaius flanked the group, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Titus brought up the rear, his face a mask of conflicted emotions. Septimus, the techno-priest, pointed towards a maintenance access point at the base of the aqueduct. "There, we can use the service elevators to reach the upper levels. The height should give your signal the best chance of breaking through the planetary defense grid." As they began their ascent, the first rays of Funnich-Elara's twin suns painted the sky in hues of amber and crimson. The beauty of the moment was lost on the fugitives as they climbed higher and higher, the sprawling megalopolis shrinking beneath them. Finally, they emerged onto a narrow maintenance platform near the apex of the aqueduct. The wind howled around them, tugging at their clothes and equipment. Far below, the city was starting to stir, unaware of the drama unfolding high above. "Set up here," Flavius ordered, gesturing to a relatively sheltered spot. "Marcus, how long do you need?" The communications specialist was already unpacking the radio. 10 minutes to configure, maybe another 5 to boost the signal strength. After that, it's in the hands of the gods. As Marcus worked, Flavius turned to Septimus. "Your people are in position." The techno-priest nodded, his augmented eyes glowing faintly in the early morning light. "Yes, if your transmission is detected, they'll create distractions across the city. It should buy you some time." Suddenly, Livia's voice cut through the tense atmosphere. "Centurion, we've got company." From their vantage point, they could see a convoy of security vehicles converging on the base of the aqueduct. Armored troops poured out, their weapons glinting in the sunlight. Flavius's mind raced. How had they been found? His eyes fell on Titus, and in that moment he knew. The wounded legionnaire met his gaze, a mixture of shame and defiance on his face. "Why?" Flavius asked, his voice barely audible over the wind. Titus straightened, his hand inching towards his concealed weapon. "For a chance to go home. For a chance to live. I'm sorry, Centurion, but not all of us were willing to die for a lost cause." Before anyone could react, chaos erupted. The resistance members with them revealed hidden weapons, some siding with Titus, others remaining loyal to Septimus. In the blink of an eye, the maintenance platform became a battlefield. "Protect Marcus," Flavius roared, drawing his own sidearm. "The mission comes first." What followed was a desperate struggle, fought in close quarters with the constant threat of a lethal fall. Livia's scout training proved invaluable as she danced between opponents, her hidden blade flashing. Gaius, caught in the crossfire, used his medical knowledge to target vulnerable points, incapacitating foes with surgical precision. Flavius found himself face to face with Titus. His former comrade's eyes were wild with a mixture of fear and determination. "Stand down," Soldier Flavius commanded, his voice carrying the weight of years of authority. For a moment it seemed Titus might comply. Then, with a cry of anguish, he lunged forward. The two men grappled at the edge of the platform, each knowing that a single misstep would mean death. In the end, it was Titus who faltered. As he stumbled, Flavius grabbed him, straining to hold on. Their eyes met one last time. "For Drydus," Flavius said softly. Then Titus was gone, falling away into the dawn sky. Centurion Marcus's voice cut through the aftermath of the skirmish. "The radio is ready." Flavius turned to see his remaining legionnaires battered but alive. Septimus and a handful of his loyal followers had survived as well. Below, the sounds of battle echoed up from the city as the resistance put their distraction plan into action. With grim determination, Flavius took the radio. This was the moment everything had led to. He took a deep breath and began to transmit. "This is Centurion Flavius Aquila of the 9th Drydian Legion, calling any Confederation forces. We are stranded on Funnich-Elara following an attack by unknown forces, requesting immediate extraction. The situation here is volatile. Repeat, requesting immediate extraction." For several agonizing moments, there was nothing but static. Then, faintly at first but growing stronger, a voice crackled through. "Centurion Aquila, this is the DCS Imperius. We read you. Hang tight, soldier. The cavalry's coming." A wave of relief washed over the group, but it was short-lived. The maintenance door burst open, disgorging a squad of heavily armed security forces. "Protect the radio," Flavius shouted, taking cover behind a jutting piece of machinery. "We just need to hold out a little longer." What followed was a desperate last stand. The legionnaires and their allies fought with the strength of desperation, knowing that help was on the way. Gaius fell first, a blaster bolt catching him in the chest as he dragged a wounded Septimus to safety. Livia's luck finally ran out as she was cornered by 3 opponents, but she took them with her in a final, defiant explosion. Through it all, Marcus huddled over the radio, relaying critical information to the incoming Drydian forces. Flavius stood over him, a one-man bulwark against the tide of enemies. As his power pack ran dry and enemies closed in from all sides, Flavius allowed himself a small smile. In the distance, he could see the contrails of descending ships, Drydian ships. They had done it. Against all odds, they had completed their mission. "For Drydus," he whispered, raising his empty weapon in one final act of defiance. "For the Confederation." The maintenance platform erupted in a blaze of weapons fire. When the smoke cleared, silence reigned once more. Far above, the first Drydian dropships began their approach, their hulls gleaming in the full light of dawn. The lost legion of Funnich-Elara had come home. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this. And please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.